And one, we're on. We got Rob Belushi, the writer, the star, co-star, and executive producer of Dylan, nominated by Mary Lou Belli. Rob, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate, what you are doing to support the kind of filmmaking that we are promoting. And so it's very meaningful to me and the audience and the mission. So with that said, Rob, do you want to introduce yourself at all?
Sure, yeah. I'm Rob Belushi. I'm actor, filmmaker living in Los Angeles. I grew up in Chicago and Los Angeles. I went to high school in LA. And then after college, I went to film school at Wesleyan in Connecticut. And then I moved back to Chicago to continue training as an actor, doing theater, and whatever else was available. And then I moved to LA in the end of 2010.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that is, you've known for a long time that you wanted to be a filmmaker, and you are definitely classically trained. When did you know? I'm just curious.
When did I know?
Yeah.
So I think, movies for everyone are just like a really important part of growing up. And I was an only child. I watched a lot of movies when I was little, and it was always something I grabbed onto. And when I was in Los Angeles, there was a lot of actors around me, and I didn't think I wanted to do that. I had a teacher in high school who taught some awesome, like, European cinema, postmodern, he'd teach us a lot of really cool things. And I really gravitated to him and to that class and did really well. So when it came time to ask myself what I wanted to study for 4 years, film was the clear, easy answer. I went to Wesley, I read Janine Basinger's criticism in high school and kind of fell in love with her because she was so smart and so readable at the same time. And I thought her concepts were so cool. So it was always a dream to go study with her, which is hard, It's hard to get into the major, and but I did, and it was life-changing. She's the greatest, as I'm sure everyone could say more eloquently. But originally I wanted to be a director, producer, and then I started doing more acting in college at Wesleyan, and I met a professor there. His name is Yuri Kordonsky. I think he's at Yale now, but Russian dude, and he changed my life again.
So did he?
We could look in the theater if we were in Russia. We would not have to take a break, but we'd take 5 minutes. He was just like a great guy.
Yeah, that's cool. So was it based on the method?
Was his act?
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought like Chekhov into it a lot. That's, I think, what he studied predominantly in St. Petersburg, but mostly he was like helping people to find. He used to say, "We live life on stage," and I thought that was such a cool way of looking at acting and theater in general. And I kind of became aware of the role of theater. I'd never, I grew up going to Steppenwolf and Second City and all these cool places when I was in Chicago. So I knew the impact that theater could have, but I never knew that I could have a role in it. So he kind of helped give myself permission to do that on my own.
What do you think he meant by that? Living life on stage.
Well, I think ultimately he meant tell the truth, tell the truth on stage so people can see something that they can relate to or respond to or recognize, whether that's a point of view that is rhetorical or just the ability to share emotionally with humanity, I think is a wide range. But if you can be alive on stage and, you know, ultimately don't be an actor, you know, be a human being.
So the goal,
I would think, you know, but
yeah, totally.
serious Russian, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm serious Russian. I was born in Kiev. If Konstantin Lubchinsky didn't give it away, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know the Kostya, you know.
Yeah, Kostya and Kostya.
Yeah, yeah. The loving nickname, yeah.
Yeah.
We called Yuri Yura, and it was we were all a family. It was very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like Yuri's teaching is that ultimately the goal is truth, whether you're living it on or off the stage.
Yeah, 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 and he was just inspiring, you know, like bring your best work, commit, you know, give yourself to the discipline and stuff. So he was heavily Michael Chekhov based, which is awesome and difficult and maddening. But
Very cool.
yeah, he was a loving, great. He was my teacher. So
beautiful.
So anyway, it had been, you know, I wasn't that great yet. I mean, I wasn't any good by the time I graduated. So I moved to Chicago to get better and to continue training and get some experience. And that kind of led me away from my film study degree for a long time until really this short. I mean, we'd shot some fun like a comedy pilot that we did and a bunch of videos and stuff like that, but it didn't have the kind of thrust of like putting together a production and hiring actors and crew and all that. So this is kind of like a really fun, ultimately I think successful welcome back to something I've always loved, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, to use the short and to learn more about the process and the inspiration and you know, the depth of the meaning of it, I'll just, you know, quickly describe it thematically for our audience. It's really a horror flick for me, suspense, horror, and I don't know how much of it thematically you want to give away. I know that it's in festivals, so it's not publicly screenable right now. But essentially, it's a thwarted expectations, and it's sort of the ultimate betrayal that ends up in a very violent ending. And so, with that setup, unless you want to describe or, you know, augment any of the theme that I've just mentioned, you know, the first question of this show is, what was your inspiration? What made you want to write and perform and executive produce this film?
That's a great question. So it was, yeah, I thought that was a great thematic synopsis. You do such a great job on this show.
Thank you. Very kind.
Yeah, describing and explaining general concepts. So I guess what made me want to do it was I like anyone else, like I wanted to make something again, and I had the director Corey Miller and the DP Judy Fu. We all wanted to like play together, you know. We're good friends, and Judy had this free studio space that like someone was allotting her, and I was like, oh, great, like,
yeah.
They said, you know, let's try to shoot something. This was last summer. Let's shoot something there. It'd be fun. I was like, great. So I looked at the studio space and I kind of wrote Dylan to what I saw available within their different
great
rooms and whatever.
Yeah.
And it kind of came like, and the first question was like, oh, okay, let's make something. And my friend Amy had just tweeted something about like, you know, being relegated as a Latina actress to the best friend role again, you know, I mean, and I was like, oh, well, I'll write you a lead role and in a small way say, that sucks. I think she finds that often the case as a Latina actor. She's, you know, hey, we loved you for this role. Would you play the best friend? You know, and it's like, so those were kind of two things that came together. I mean, I wish it was like more profound than that, but like we all wanted to create something. This was the thing we created, and
I bet you it is. I bet you it is, Rob. I mean, check it out. It's like, you know, you could have written anything, right? You're the creative um, launch of this film, right? So it could have gone any genre, it could have tackled any theme, could have tackled any storyline, yet you chose this out
yeah.
of the myriad of options that you had. And so when you boil down the themes thematically, I find that if you say, well, what's the kernel of this story? And it really is this, you know, extreme version of betrayal. And, you know, to a level of malevolence that's evil, you know, beyond just kind of human foibles that are pretty bad. But, you know, so there's a darkness that you explored there, chose to explore and play with. So what was your inspiration to go there?
Yeah, well, you know, yeah. I mean, look, on the most surface level, this was a genre that the director and I really love. You know, we love thrillers, we love suspense, we also love the psychology of. I mean, love as in fascinated by.
A lot of people are.
Yeah, exactly. John Douglas and all that Mindhunter stuff. Like we read those books years ago, and we just think it's fascinating. However, on a nuts and bolts,
And why? I mean, that's what's interesting is why do you gravitate towards it and find it fascinating?
I just think I think for me it's always the scariest monster is is the one that's standing in front of you and you not knowing it. So like I find
You in the mirror.
yeah, the one looking at me in the Google chat right now. Yeah. Um, so like I never really got I knew that it was going to be a short, and I knew that we wanted it to be an emotional journey, and I know that I didn't want it to be melodrama or like anything like that. So, in order to score emotions, it would be easy and effective to have threats.
You know, Rob, that's really, I think, honest. And I think what that tells me, so that's honest in terms of getting that emotional um, connection or emotional effect that you're looking for. But I think what's even more interesting for me is, you know, in our just talk right now, you said, hey, man, you know, the scariest thing is the thing that's facing you. And I said the mirror. And you said, no, the guy in the Google chat. And I think what that tells me is that that's the unknown. And, you know, as all of us humans, it's so, you know, we have this, you know, I'm finding it in I'm vacationing with a family and there's extended family and extended family. And people are brought in and to this circle, right? And first we have this tribe and then there's the in and they're out. And as you're first meeting people and building trust, there is, you know, it's that interplay between how do we love and allow ourselves to love and open our hearts to the other, and how do we protect ourselves from the other, which may be a threat. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's a really perceptive uh, entry point to the the fulcrum of our short, which is like you never really know anyone, and that's the scariest thing I think about humanity in general. You know, whether it be like, hey, this person's great, and we get along so well, and they're such a nice person, and then I find out like, oh, you voted for a system of government that is totally opposite of my viewpoint, is actually invested in like taking lots of rights away. You know, like how do we square that? So I think as humans, we go through many betrayals a day, and they're also so part of that betrayal is people having secrets and hiding who they are. And part of that trail is our own expectations that we assign to situations and others. And through the confluence of that, like some really scary shit can go down, you know? I'm sorry, can I swear on here?
Yeah, totally. We definitely encourage it. Yeah.
So when you say the person like looking at you in the mirror, which would be me, like that's a totally relevant point. You know what? I love that. That kind of passed me by a second ago. You know, but yeah, like we all have the ability to have this monstrous side, and more than that, like there are threats that we see every day in the mundane. It's not going to be the mummy that comes to get us. It's going to be, you know, someone who spots us at the grocery store and finds something interesting about us and follows us to our house and
God, no, Rob.
knows where we live. And it's just, oh, I just think that person's great. And then like, oh, I'm going to start watching that person a little, you know, and like, these are things that happen every day. And that's what I think.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's what fascinates people about serial killers is because the impregnability of just a basic human facade really can cover a lot of scary stuff underneath. So for Dylan, like we also wanted to play upon the fact of like, you know, there's this seemingly charming, non-threatening guy selling an experience or an event that is totally fine, but in fact, it's actually a setup for perhaps their demise or a loss of agency.
Thank you for that elucidation. I think it really is meaningful. That adds a lot of layers to the story that you told. Just as a personal note between us, I'm going to share a story with you that it reminds me of. So I listened to this guy, Ram Dass. He's a spiritual teacher. He's a very interesting. Yeah. You know him?
I think I just didn't. I saw him on the Gary Shandling doc.
Really?
I think so.
That'd be far out. He had a stroke recently, so I don't know if he was in a wheelchair. Then yes.
Maybe I could be looking really stupid on your show right now.
No, not at all, dude. Doesn't matter. The point is this. So he tells this story, which I love, man. It's so profound to me, at least. And it's about love. He describes ultimate love. And so he talks about there's the samurai, and they were warriors back in the day in, I think, Asia, China, let's say China. And they invaded another province, right? And everybody was scared, and everybody took off because they knew the ferocity of the samurai leader who led this army, and they took off. And so when they got in and they had control over this province, the samurai spoke to his lieutenant in charge, and the samurai said, "What's going on? What's the deal?" And the lieutenant's like, "Everybody's gone. Everybody took off except this one monk in this one monastery." And the samurai was furious. He was, you know, the commander, he was furious. He was like, "What? This one guy is still there? I'm heading there now." So he goes in and he kicks open the gates to this little monastery, and he sees the monk standing in front of him. And he comes up to the monk, nose to nose, and he takes out his samurai sword, and he says, "Don't you know who I am? With one thrust, I can rip your belly apart and take your life." And the monk says, "Don't you know who I am? With one blow, I can let you pierce my belly and take my life." So I've thought about that for a while in the context of love. And I wonder, you know, if maybe I could offer that as something beyond the show that might resonate with you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
So, um, so let's just like, do you have any questions about that or how that relates?
No, I mean, I think, you know, people, it's an interesting statement in terms of uh, what makes a victim, you know, like, is there is there choice, is there power in victimization, and you know, do you, I mean, just as a story, I like the status reversal at the end, like, I allow you, you know. I think in terms of our story, she is clearly a victim, and it's not just a physical victim, but a victim of misunderstanding and manipulation. Um, but that's cool.
I think that's a great interpretation of that story in the context of your film. Yeah, totally. So to get to the next question, really, in terms of the structure of the show, what do you think the message of the film is? And did we already cover it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, just to like quickly sum up, I guess that first question you asked is like, we knew we wanted to make something because making something is so great and it activates. You know, film is an awesome medium because it's collaborative, right? So many ideas get thrown around and it activates more ideas. And working in a group is really fun for me. Like, I like working in an ensemble. So we had a great ensemble of collaborators, and we got it made for the amount of money that we had and were able to raise, and we were really lucky. So in that way, it was just like, can we get something cool made? And we did, and we're really happy with the way it turned out. People gave music and um, you know, scoring, and actors came in for free. I mean, it was great. So if I could, if anyone's watching, I'd say if you have an idea, do your best to make it, because it's hard, but you never know. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, God. Anyway, so what's the message of the film? I'm a big believer in like, take any message you see in it, like take themes that you want. I know for us, just if and by listening to our director Corey talk about the Q&As, you know, I'd say that like there are a few messages, you know, that could be seen just from watching the action of the film, like we touched on. You know, there is a mixed race couple that are, you know, own a home and have a stable relationship, and and visually, you know, a Caucasian friend arrives in that home and isn't exactly honest, and ultimately that mixed race couple is, um, you know, victimized, um, initially through rhetoric and then physically. So it, we didn't mean it to be like a white nationalist allegory of anything like that, but it has certain parallels to, I think, what we're seeing right now in this administration and government in general. So on another level, it's if you know what it means is like, when do we know that we're in danger, and why do we keep from acting, and how separated are we from our instincts? I just want to make it very clear that I am not in support of any white nationalist. That was
No,
not. I hope that was very
clear.
okay.
Yeah, I just think you're talking about the current kind of tone or climate that's going on.
Yeah, it's just like a charming snake oil salesman who, in the end, you find yourself with nothing. So
But I think what you said, the second thing that you said, is really interesting. I mean, that's, I think, as an audience, is what you're waiting for. It's like, oh, here you have this really tough woman who's presented in a tough, dominant corporate role initially, and then she isn't able to take charge. And why?
Yeah, and so her ability to find her own agency to act, I thought was like a fun and great thing for Amy Carrera to play. And then the other thing that's set up is, like, in the beginning, her partner, fiance, boyfriend, Nick, is, kind of laying this trip on her about why they should meet with his friend that night. And he knows it's not a great time, but, it seems like just a normal kind of boyfriend, girlfriend compromising discussion. But then, you see her with Dylan trying to, like, make this just meal dating, or this eating situation, turn into something more as if it were a date or something. And you see this woman kind of manipulated on both sides by these male characters. And I just thought it was interesting how Corey put that together, like the only time we see her in conjunction with men is they are trying to work their agenda on her. And I'm not a woman, but I see it happening a lot. And I'm sure that I'm hopeful that women can respond to that experience of just, like, I don't know, let me do my thing. Like, is one type of manipulation, obviously, this is a movie, it's not real, but there are instances of abuse and assault, and putting those aside, like, is there a difference,
Well, I think that's, an interesting question. What's the difference between manipulation and adult discussion and compromise that reaches consensus?
Yeah.
And, there certainly is one, and I think respect is probably the full component. And fairness, and,
Of course, right. One is not the same as the other, obviously, and we wanted to paint a picture of a very stable relationship where, we weren't really focusing on how they got to where they are in terms of their life circumstances. We just wanted to really normalize this picture of this couple, and then the thread was going to be me. Yeah.
And I think that was, when you see her with her boyfriend, it seems, like you said, it's pretty legitimate, adult kind of discussion to reach consensus. But certainly it gets kind of weird and freaky with Dylan.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a distinction that I, thought was there. So that said, will leads us right into, what did you learn on or off the set?
Oh my God, so much, like I said, I mostly what I learned, the biggest thing that I learned is, like, do the thing you're scared of, like, even if you don't know how to do it. Like, I have not produced a lot of things, and I'm not, like, a really chill guy, so I get pretty stressed out easily. And
just got to catch you. I said you seem pretty chill now.
Oh, well, it's early. We're meeting early in the morning. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. I got to catch you early.
Yeah, day off of an off day. I definitely learned that, like, I had a hard time producing, writing, and acting because I had to really concentrate on letting go of my idea, and also, like, in order for other people to collaborate with it, and also to let go of the results so that I could do my job as an actor. And it was difficult. So my hats are really off to actor directors out there I wouldn't have been able to do it on this one, at least. Um, I also learned so much just about modern cheap filmmaking in general, and how to sell people on the idea of collaboration as a meaningful end in itself. I learned um, I learned that the stories that that we
What do you
choose.
mean? I'm sorry. Can you hold that thought?
Yeah.
What do you mean by selling people on collaboration?
Well, we didn't have money to pay, much, and actors are sometimes more eager to jump on board, um, because they're on screen, at least, But we uh, we paid our crew, but not much. Not what they're. No one got paid what they were worth. If they got paid at all, no one got their value, but they brought their value nonetheless. So, ultimately we relied on the kindness of artists wanting to collaborate, wanting to create something, as opposed to, you know, this is my livelihood.
Well, I think that's important to say that because it's like, there is no monetary value that can be placed on somebody's time and inspiration, and especially in an artistic environment. I think, a lot of people say, well, this is my day rate because I do commercials or I do, corporate video or film, TV, whatever. But people come together on short films because it's an a truly artistic medium where they get to explore things that they typically may not be able to because the industry doesn't allow for it. There isn't a market for it. There's a very small artistic market for the kind of filmmaking that most filmmakers want to make. So I certainly understand that nuance to navigate, between people's egos and people's artistic collaborative desire to be together and unite. And it's something that has to be both honored. You have to honor the people that are bringing together their time and especially helping, the creative project that is really the birth child of a, small number of people, 3 or 4 people that really get the big credit for it. But I think so that's an important, really important place to navigate. Like, how do you take care of your actors? Can you pay them if you can? If not, providing meals, limiting the days to, to hours that are within, not like a 12-hour shooting day where they're getting paid.
Which we did not do. Like, we
Yeah.
shot nights mostly
Yeah.
because we were in my house, not a stage. We lost that sound stage 2 weeks before we shot, and I had to like rewrite the whole thing to fit a house. And ultimately the reason we started was not the reason we ended. The reason we started was a cheap opportunity, and the
Right.
reason we ended was we really want to tell this story.
That's super dope. Those
Yeah.
are the best stories, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to work your chops, and then you're really doing it for the story.
Yeah, and we wanted, like, for each position, we really wanted people to have at least something to show. Like, for the score, we wanted to lay that in in a place where it would resonate, and our composer would be like, oh, I really brought something to this.
Yeah.
Laura Benak gave us a song, and like that song is the mood of the whole film. Amy got to do. Nick got his little piece, or Chris Gardner, the actor, got his little piece to show a piece of himself. We wanted everyone. The DP Judy made this, really shot it beautifully, I think, and everyone got a place to kind of show up in ways that, like, you often don't get to in TV and film. You're part of like this cog, so we were happy about that.
That's awesome, man. That's what it's all about, man. That's, what we're promoting here is telling authentic stories that move people, really
Yeah.
resonate, that's the most important thing. If we can get the opportunity to tell those stories however we can, that's where our hearts are all moved, and why we all, as kids, adults, whatever it is, or the kids inside the adults, that's who is making the art, right?
Yeah.
So, you know what I find interesting, man, is that oftentimes on these chats that I have, the end often rounds back to the beginning, right? So you said one of the things that you learned was do what you're afraid of. Do what
Yeah.
you're afraid of. And I think, you know, the premise of your film, you know, and what we were discussing about oftentimes the scariest person is the one who's standing in front of you, is that as well as doing what you're afraid of and being able to navigate that human landscape with an authenticity, which is used in the movie, that is an open-hearted welcome, and at the same time, when there is a threat, then you can have a voice and navigate that efficiently.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I love that. I mean, you know, we really wanted this to look real. You know, a lot of shorts are beautiful reimaginings. We wanted this to be a very real uh, exploration of this type of situation. We wanted to look real. We wanted the performances to be real and naturalistic because ultimately that's scarier, you know, to live life on stage, as Yura would say. And then I just think that's the scariest thing. Instead of some ghost or some witch or whatever, like,
Yeah. How do you bury your soul in front of other humans?
yeah, yeah, there's no rules to some predator, man.
Yeah,
Well,
but you can,
the new Predator looks really great.
but look, man, you can sniff one. You're an animal, and you have instinct, and follow that gut.
Yeah, yeah.
So, brother, it was a very nice discussion. Rob Belushi on Play It Forward. Dylan is the film, and
Yes.
thank you so much for being on the show, bro.
Of course, look for the feature that's in development soon. It'll be out.
All right, send us a link. We'll throw it out on the channel.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Later. Thank you. Have a great day, man. Thank you for
You
being
as
on
well.
the show. Honored.
Of course.
Thank you for showing us yourself. Appreciate
Oh,
the courage.
namaste.
Namaste, bro. Bye.
Bye.